we want to share a story about a conversation that we thought we had, that we actually didn't have at all, and how we had to deal with it when it came up. So, you want to start the share? Or you want me to start the share?
I can start.
All right, start the share.
We had the conversation. Do you want kids? You have a vision. You decide to get pregnant. You get pregnant. You have a vision that it's going to be a typical pregnancy. It's going to be a typical child rearing, that everybody's going to be happy and healthy. And you don't necessarily, well, what if?
Right. You have the fairy tale Disney version of, hey, I'm going to have kids. They're going to look like this. They're going to be whatever, I'm going to have a boy. I'm going to have a girl. I'm going to have, they're going to be in sports. They're going to do it. You have a vision for your family. So yeah, go on.
Absolutely. Well, we apparently didn't go deep enough with that, because when the girls were 13, we got a diagnosis of muscular dystrophy, and that changed the vision quite a bit. And we weren't prepared. I'm not saying we didn't handle it well. We'll get to that in a second. But we weren't prepared for that, because we just went with we're going to have kids and everything's going to be grand.
Yeah. So a version of the question behind the question is, we've talked in the first two critical conversations about what's my vision for it? What's my vision for it? What's my vision for it? And I think when we establish our visions are positive. Our visions are the perfect scenario. Our visions are aspirational. But if you don't look at the entire spectrum of how something can turn out, your vision is limited, right? So in this example, we had a vision for having 2 kids, building our family. We had a vision for them being athletic and active and high priority on academics, et cetera, building them into these nice young adults. Well, we didn't have a vision in there or a discussion in there that's like, hey, what happens if they have physical challenges? What happens if they have mental challenges? What happens if life throws, the unexpected at you? And that's exactly what happened to us. So it was an area where we didn't have the breadth of the conversation. So what happened when we went down this diagnosis track is, all of a sudden we're having conversations and having to process things that we had never even thought about.
It would have been much nicer to have had those in advance, or at least a cursory, because who's going to say, my kid's going to have this, right? You don't know for sure. But to have okay, hey, what is the path forward if something unexpected happens with our children?
And I think, so I have a tattoo artist that I spent a very long time with, that we had awesome, great conversations about. And he is I would consider him a very broad thinker. He wants to look at everything from every angle. And I think it's part of his artistic background, but it's part of just his nature. And he was starting to date a woman that he was getting very serious with. And he had several long-term relationships, and he had actually even, co-parented and raised a couple kids in there that weren't his. But this was the first time he was really considering long-term marriage and potentially having kids. And he really appreciated the discussions we had around the impact that having a child with special needs, be it mental or physical, because it allowed him to really explore that, hey, that's what you're signing up for. When you sign up to have kids, you are taking on the responsibility that they might be in this lane where everything is smooth sailing, or they might be all the way in this other lane. And let's be honest, there's even way further lanes than where ours landed, right? It's a spectrum. And he really appreciated the exercise that him and his now fiance, pretty sure fiance now at this point, have had around, hey, are we willing to sign up for that? And if you have that conversation and someone really pauses and hesitates and says, ooh, well, then you really got to pressure test that. You got to push down deeper onto that. So we had that moment where we sort of were in the thick of it. Now, for me, it wouldn't have changed anything. I would have been perfectly fine with it. But it definitely, to say it, knocked us back on our heels.
I was just going to say, it wouldn't have been so shocking or unexpected if it was, okay, obviously not our vision, but we've explored this at least a little bit.
Yeah. So what would have been different if we'd had this conversation before than not is that we wouldn't have been shocked by it. It would have been in our consciousness of, hey, this can happen. And it might sound very naive to think, well, why wasn't it? Well, because it wasn't.
And the other part of that is because this didn't happen until she was a preteen teen. And so for the first 10 years, we did have And so I
that
think
initial vision,
so
right?
even if we would have thought about it, it probably would have gotten pushed to the
Sure.
back of our mind because we were 10 years in and everything was going according to the vision.
To the vision. And I think the only thing we would change is we would just have we'd have the
Mhm.
thought earlier. We'd have the conversation earlier just to sort of pressure us. And I would argue that we are now in our 50s way better that when we enter new areas for us, we look at the spectrum.
Mhm.
We're better. And this goes back to what I said earlier, which is it's hard to have a vision for your life in your 20s. It's hard to understand the breadth of things. As you get into your 30s and 40s, hopefully life wisdom sort of kicks you enough times and challenges you enough times that you're like, okay, I know here's what I want to happen. Okay, here's where I see it could possibly go. And you're more prepared for that. So we would have been more prepared. What does it say about our relationship, though, that even though we didn't have the conversation, we still got through all that? What does that say?
We had such a strong foundation because we had always talked about things, maybe not to the level that we thought we had, but we were strong in so many areas that helped kind of, I don't know, solidify, I don't know, kind of put us in a way that we were able to handle it together because we were in a good place.
Where I would take from the message of this is that even if you don't go to all the details of these conversations, you're still going to get through them as long as you are working to get better at these things and to improve those areas. So that's our ink moment, was a conversation that we thought we had that wasn't deep enough. And yeah, that's it.